Okay, and I think we are on. Make sure I'm recording this. That's right. Hello and welcome to Extra Connections. I'm James Lott Jr. here on my network, JLJ Media. I'm the JJ of JLJ Media. And I'm bringing you somebody who I'm excited because we're going to talk about hosting. This person is a world-renowned host, keynote speaker. He talks about hosting and being on camera, being in front of stages and audiences. He does what I do, but he's based from Europe, and we like that. But he had a lot of things for the U.S. market. You go to his website, you can actually get help from him on how to host and some of the best practices in being a presenter, a hoster, all that kind of stuff. We don't just wake up and get in front of a microphone. It's lots of different things that go on while we're hosting, ways to make us better hosts. And so he and I are going to talk about all of that on this show. Now help me welcome Ronny Leber. Hello, Ronny.
Hi, James. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with you and also to everybody listening. Welcome. And thank you for your time. You're going to make it worthwhile your time.
We are. And I'm going to try to, let's see, one thing here. We close. How do I, oh my God, why is this going? Okay, let's see, close. There we go. So I had to press all these buttons now. Engineers do it for me, but you know, you got to do it yourself these days. We're here. So if you're coming in the chat room, come on in the chat room, take a listen. Questions about hosting or presenting, please put them in the chat. Live chat, Ronny. So if you want to, just let me know and I'll ask him or we'll talk about it. One of the things you want to bring up. So Ronny, I went to your website and I love it. And I also went on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, Ronny Leber. And you give tips on how to look at the camera, how to, how to speak, all these kind of things. I find out, when did you start hosting yourself? When did you become a presenter or host yourself?
Well, besides some tiny experiences when I was in school, but like my first real experiences were back in 2008. And that was actually hosting for our professional soccer team in Vienna for their youth teams, like for their under 17, under 19 teams, like once a month on a Saturday afternoon, having 2 soccer games in a row and just like announcing the players, announcing the goal scorers, and also reading the lineups basically for 100, 150 people. And 1 year later, in 2009, I actually got the opportunity of being the host or becoming the host for our local professional ice hockey team. And that was the first time then when I started with that in August, September of 2009, when I thought, man, this could become a career. I love that. I would love to do more of that. And I'm going to dig in totally. I'm going to really immerse myself. I'm going to learn. And that's when the whole journey started.
Sports hosting, very different. That's because you're literally in the moments, every moment, following the moments. So how do you get through sports hosting? I've never done it, so that's one part of hosting I've never done. So I was curious, how do you do it? I admire. I watch football and stuff, so I admire that.
Well, it is different, and it's not. Because there's still something, whoever your audience is, you need to understand your audience. Like you love sports, James, you said?
Yeah, I like football. I'm a big football fan.
Awesome. So whatever sports you're hosting, but it's also in general, if you're hosting a business event, you always need to understand who is your audience and why are they there? Like what are their desires? What are their needs? What is their emotional involvement to it? And for example, and I've hosted football events. I've hosted football, soccer, ice hockey, tennis, table tennis, dancing, marathon. And I'm a boxing ring announcer. And so basically, but every sports, just as in every business, has its own separate audience. And you always need to know who is your audience. I'll give you an example. Let's see what's your favorite team in football?
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Pittsburgh Steelers. Awesome. All right. So let's say you are the Pittsburgh Steelers and you go to a home game in Pittsburgh. And terrible towels and everything.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I have mine.
And so here's the point. It's going to be very different if you're hosting a preseason game against, I don't know, let's say the the Las Vegas Raiders.
Right. Okay, Las Vegas Raiders, sure.
Like you're gonna go there, it's gonna be a fun time, but it's like, all right, or like some I don't know, the New York Jets or something, yeah, like a team that is not really awesome at the time, and it's like, and it's a preseason game, like it doesn't really go for anything. You're just there to enjoy and so on. And you as a host, you need to understand those emotions that are in a fan, because it's going to be very, very different if you're showing up there to an AFC championship game against, let's say, a Tom Brady New England Patriots. And you know, like, damn, today it's about everything. Today, like, this is it. We need to win this and we're going to the Super Bowl. And the whole buildup is going to be different. Everything's going to be different from the moment you walk into those gates, because also the emotions of the people coming there are going to be very, very different from a preseason game to an AFC championship game. And as a host, you need to understand your audience. You need to understand their desires, their wants, their needs, their dreams. Like, what is keeping them up? Because basically, when you're going there to the AFC championship game, you're like dreaming about this every night, the week leading up to it, from the moment you know that you're going to go there. Like, damn, we're in a championship game. That's awesome. And you're excited about it. You're not going to have the same level of excitement going to a preseason game. So, and those are the things, like, I always say you're taking your audience on an emotional journey. And when you're thinking, well, okay, in sports, I get it, but how is that going to be in a business context? Still, you need to understand, why are they there? And what is their involvement? For example, let's say that you're just hosting a business event inside your company. And you might have people there that are not on your side. You might have people there that have a different standpoint. Or you might have people there that are coming to that meeting because they have an emotional involvement around the topic. Or you might know that they have no emotional involvement at all. But you need to know that. And you need to address it. Because if they're coming there because they're bored out of their mind, but they need to be there, then, I mean, you need to address it differently, as if you know that there's something at stake for them.
That's true. And I like that. It's true. So maybe I could do hosting a sports event I just never have. I don't know. But no, you're right about that, because I just hosted a book event at a bookstore, book signing, for a friend of mine who wrote a book, and he's an actor in the business. And you're right. I knew that everybody who was there were there for him. So everything besides my questions, we had a question and answer set. Besides that section, I knew that all of my hosting talk should relate to him, or the audience who loves him, right? So I knew that. It was like, that's the way you come up there, you go, okay, kids, we're here for blah, blah. Like, you just know, so they get into it. You're like, are there some fans of this show of his? Like, yeah, we're ready. Like, you're right. You have to, like, know the room. You have to know the room. That is so smart.
And it's a great example what you're just giving, because I want to give a different example from a few years ago. I did a warm up for a TV show, and like it was a comedy show with a comedian, and people love him, and people came there for him.
Yeah.
And basically, my job as a warm up was not like, I knew that they were not there for me. Yeah. They were there for him. So it was just like to kind of build them up, to keep them engaged, to get them involved or engaged in a conversation. And we taped 4 shows in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And after the first show, the producer came to me and he was like, wow, you're doing a great job. And I said, well, I'm actually not really doing anything. I mean, I'm just like having a conversation with the people. And he said, that's exactly right. And you know what? I've seen so many people come here and fail, like so many hosts come here and fail because they thought it's about them. They thought like, hey, now here's an audience and I'm going to do my show. But they're not there for their show. You need to understand, why are they there?
Mm-hmm. You read something really, where's my bell? Here's a big point. Here's a big point right here. You said something that is completely a big point. I keep trying to tell people, I used to work in a studio and at Buzz TV, and we had a lot of hosts come through there. We did shows for shows. I was there 7 years. And I kept trying to tell people, it's never about you. your personality, because a lot of people, and you know this, want to get known. They want to be known. I keep saying you'll get known if you're just good. If you're a good host, you'll get known. Your personality can come through while you're hosting, but it's not about you. It's not your show. It's not about you going, hi, and look at me, and look what I did. Oh my God, how I'm funny. Like, no, it's about everything else. You're the conduit, you're the hype, you will get noticed. Don't worry. If you're good, you'll get noticed. It's not about you.
And even if the show has your name, like let's say the David Letterman show back in the day, right, or Larry King or something, it was not about David Letterman or Larry King. Of course, you were watching because you liked their style, but for them, it was not about, hey, look how cool I am. It was all about their guests, building a bridge from their guests to their audience, like making their guests look great.
Yes.
And that's the point. Like, you need to build a bridge from what's really going on to your audience.
Yeah.
You're the translator. You're the linking part, the missing link.
Yes. Also, as host, you're also the person who, so in some cases, especially like live events, well, even on TV too, and even radio, I've done everything, and I'm sure you have too. You're also kind of the conductor. You're also the mood temperature person. You're always checking the mood of the room. You're also the person who moves things along. Sometimes you're actually there to actually move things along. Like, you literally have hosting duties where you have to, like, now it's time for the games, and now it's time for so and so. Like, you and I both done this. So I'm like, being a host is a lot that you're doing. You will get noticed. If you're good, they will notice you, but it's not about you. It's about that show, that gig, that episode, whatever it is, right?
And it's about, and as you said, about moving things along, because especially in many smaller events, as a host, you're also kind of the director.
Yes.
Like, they tell you, look, this is a syntax, but I mean, how many of us have been to an event where there was a host and suddenly, like, it was supposed to take 1 hour and suddenly it was 3 hours? Or, well, like, it was taking way too long and the host was just not making progress, and you're standing there like, man, wasn't there supposed to be the food at some point? And like, man, what's happening? Yeah, like, we're totally behind schedule. But for example, that's what I've learned from having been the stadium announcer of the Austrian national team in soccer for the last 12 years, basically. And you know this from a football game as well. When the kickoff is at 3 o'clock, then the kickoff is at 3 o'clock. It's not going to be like well, I'm not done yet with the lineups. It's going to be now at 3:05 or 3:15 or whatever. No, it's like 3 o'clock and 30 seconds, or like, it's exact. That means you need to be exact and you need to be moving forward. Like, you need to be really taking care of the time, and you need to have time in mind. Like, you're also always a timekeeper. And when you have people sitting there, for example, in a panel discussion, or like that are, or people from the audience, you need to be always aware of the time. Like, where are we at? Do we have time for another question? Do we have time to actually move forward? And because sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And if it's an event, then you also might want to check this up front with the organizers. Like, hey, how is that if we get more questions from the audience? Are we flexible to have another 10 minutes, to have another 15 minutes afterwards, or not? Or are we like, do we really need to be sharp? How is the syntax?
Yes, that's true. And also, I've had situations, and I don't know if you have, where they're like, stretch it out, like somebody's late or something's happening, like, stretch. You're like, okay, well, let me study. You have to kind of know, right? You have to kind of know. I love, most of my career is live television and live events. And yeah, you too. So so for me, recorded stuff sometimes messes me up when it's recorded, but live, I'm like, I don't know what it is, Ronnie. I just feel like there's no do-overs. When it's live, it's live. And, it's live. You just go out there and I feel like I'm on my toes. I'm present. I'm fully there. I'm immersed. I'm ready to go. And like you said, you're watching. If you're certainly, you're watching the time. You're watching this over here. If you do a panel discussion, Ronnie, you know this. Is someone talking too much? Is this person over here just kind of sitting there? We have to look at that too, right? Go, oh, let me ask a question to this person. Like, right, don't we have to do that also?
Absolutely, because you need to keep the balance.
Yes.
And also now, since COVID hit, I've had 1,500 hours live on TV, and basically like being anchorman, but having had like all kinds of different things. And for example, let's say that we are going to a press conference, and the press conference is supposed to start at 10.
Yes.
All right, you announce a press conference, but it's not starting on time.
Yeah.
And you're there waiting for the press conference, but you're in the studio making money, like making time somehow. You're like talking about things and like, oh, and how is this? And maybe you have somebody else to talk with, or in the worst case, you're just there by yourself.
I've done that.
And talking with the camera, talking with the box in front of you, basically. And you're like, well, and then you need to get into all kinds of perspectives and how is this and how is that and so on. But the same applies also when you're interviewing somebody. Because when you're interviewing somebody, for me, it's always about like what questions can be asked. What are the questions that are interesting for the audience? What are the questions that are obvious that need to be asked? What are the questions that are concerning the different stakeholders? Like who else is involved in this process? Who does this involve? Who does this interest? And maybe let's say I will give you a practical example. Right now, in the last 2 years, the pandemic was a very strong topic. And let's say you're talking with somebody who is responsible for schools and for the schooling systems. Yeah. And then they did have some changes, and they did have a lot of changes, opening up, closing down, masks, no masks, and so on. And every time when you change something and you have an interview about that, it's like, well, what does it mean to the students? What does this mean to the teachers? What does it mean to the parents? And so on, like all of that. And how does this play along? And so like you need to kind of, how was it until now? What's going to change from now? Where is it developing to? What is going to be the effect of that? And all those kind of things, like just coming up with questions. And that's always something that is very, very, very interesting, but just looking at different standpoints.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you a question because for me, I'm a keynote speaker also, and I've gone to
me too.
Places. Yeah, so I've done that. So I know that you said something that's very true. Before I go, I usually they come to me for a certain reason. They're like, we want you to speak on this, right? You pick a topic. They say, you go 45 minutes, James. Can you talk about this? Yes, I can. Sometimes you have a PowerPoint with you. Sometimes you don't. It depends what it is. I know for me, and I'm asking for you, I always try to talk to the organizers first and say, okay, what things do you really want out of this from me? Like you actually asked me that question before we came on. I do the same thing. So I make sure I hit those points because it's different than just talking about some things that are happening. Now you're the focus of this subject. How do you prepare for keynote speaking on subjects?
You know, first of all, I believe no matter if it's keynote speaking or if it's hosting, it's always going to start with the very first question is, what is your outcome? Like, I asked the organizer, what is your outcome? Like, what is your outcome of the whole event? Yeah, like, why are you doing this? What is it you want to pass on to the people there, like to your audience? Also, with what feeling do you want them to leave? Like, what do you want them to do afterwards? And of course, I want to understand who is the audience, who is in there, and why are they there? Like, I want to know how, like everything I can. How old are they? Are they more men, more women? What are their decision makers? Are they like in management? Are they maybe salespeople? Are they leadership? Whatever their role is. Like, I want to know as much as I can. Are they a homogeneous group or are they very heterogeneous? Like that they're maybe that they are all kinds, like in a football stadium, for example, you have all kinds of people. But there's always a common denominator. And you want to know as much as you can. And then, like, those are the two questions that I always need to know. And then out of those two answers, I'm going to create my own outcome. Obviously, according to the outcome that they have, but I might have like an outcome on top of that. And with that outcome in mind, that means I know where I'm going. I know where I want to go with the keynote or with the hosting. And then because I know who is in there and where they're coming from, I also know kind of where my starting point is, where I need to pick him up. And then from where I need to pick him up to where I want him to go, this is the gap. This is the bridge that I need to fill. This is where I need to have stories, examples, where I need to have some meat in it. I'll give you an example. And again, about hosting. And again, in a sporting context. When I started to work with the Austrian national team in soccer, the first thing what we did back then was we were thinking about, well, all right, what are some things that we can, like some points that we can integrate that we have at every single game. So we looked at the stadium opens 2 hours before kickoff. That means for you as the host, as a stadium entertainment as a whole, like not just looking just at you, but you need to look at everything, what they're getting, the music, everything that they're seeing visually, everything that's happening there. Like you need to all put this into one. It's all one. That is an experience for them. And from when you started out first, like the moment that they come into the stadium, they're entering your experience. And you want to warm them up. It means when let's say in a relationship, when you meet a woman, you're not asking, like you're not like opening the door, hey, you want to marry me? Of course not.
Well, some will do that. It doesn't work.
Yeah, some do. But I mean, but usually it's like, hey, what's your name? Or like, hey, you want to go drink something or eat something. And so you walk, like there are steps on the way. And the same is true when people come into the stadium. Like, it's not like you come in and like, here's Laola, let's do the wave or something. Like you really, you need to build them up. Like first it's going to be like the music is not totally loud, not totally upbeat. It's maybe like, all right, like some feel good music and so on. And then maybe the team comes out to the warm up. And that is like in soccer, for example, it happens about 50 minutes before the kickoff.
Yeah.
And this is the first strong, like they see them. Now you want to engage them. You want to have something going. The music is going to change. You're going to play some faster, upbeat music somewhere people are like, all right, this is cool. This is going. And then maybe creating some experiences in there, maybe having some things where they do something with you. Like you want to engage them. And the more, like the closer you get to the kickoff, the more you're going to engage them, the fuller the stadium is going to get. And all of those things you need to take into account. And basically, so coming from where they come to, like where they come into your field to where you want them to go, you need to have this in mind.
You do. No, that's good. That's good. I want to switch gears for a second because you know, we've been hosting a lot over the years. Have you had situations? I'm just sure you must have. You've done something like I have, where you weren't the greatest. You weren't on top of your game during a hosting. Yeah, I was like, so what do you? Because I have other hosts who will beat themselves. I'm like, no, sometimes it happens. Sometimes your mind wanders or something happens in your personal life just kind of weighing. Like you're just not on top. Sometimes you're just tired and you're just not fully there. So when it happens, how do you recover from that? When you go, God, that was not that good. That was not a good. I mean, how do you recover? A lot of folks get upset. I'm just like, don't get upset. Like, how do you recover from that? You personally, Ronny.
Well, maybe before I actually answer how I recover from that, most of the times I want to tell you also most of the times I believe that it actually happens. Because I believe that oftentimes it happens when you get into your head. Like when you are not present, when you're not there with the audience, when you believe something in your head, like when you're like, oh, well, it might be this, but you're not really present. You're not really paying attention to where they are at. And you're just like making something up in your mind, or maybe you're just in your head because you're like, well, what was next? So how is this? So how is, especially inexperienced hosts oftentimes have that, like when it's like, well, okay, what was the sentence? What were the words? Forget the words. It's not about the words. It's about you being present. It's about you moving along. And so for me, the way to recover is usually really like getting focused again on why I'm here. Like getting focused again on what is the outcome and who is this that I'm talking to? How do I get them to where I want them to go, and also how do I add value? How do I add value for them? So it's not just like dishing them something that they don't want. It's
Right.
really creating something together as an experience.
I agree with that completely. Anytime I do shows, whether they're live or whatever, I'm like, we're together. We're here together. I have some shows that I do, I call them my co-hosts, the fans, like, you're my co-host, you know why, you're the co-host. And, let's talk about this together. And I love that because I feel like this leads into the camera question I want to ask you. You do a show on camera work. I watched it on YouTube. And it's funny, I love the camera. I never grew up being on camera. I know I never grew up. But when I first walked into my first studio, Ronnie, when I first walked in, and there was the skill set, the desk, the lights, I saw the cameras. Ronnie, I was like, I'm at home. I am here. I was like, you couldn't get me out of there, Ronnie. I was like, I'll never leave here. I'm going to be here forever. Like, I saw cameras, and I was like, because some folks, camera work is important. Getting used to a camera is important. That's why I liked your show when you were talking about that on your YouTube channel. It's very important. And there's some folks, the camera does not lie. If you're not comfortable in front of the camera, it shows it, right? So I can talk to the camera. I can do that. I feel like the camera is part of me. How did you get used to the camera?
Well, I mean, since basically my first more than 10 years of hosting have been all live events, basically. Like I come from the live event sphere, and it was really training myself of, hey, you need to look in there and you need to project your voice. You need to look in there as if there's a real person, because many of us are not really used to, like, man, I need to look at this little dot in front of my computer screen, or I need to look into like when you're in a Zoom call, for example. The natural thing to do is just to look at your screen, to look at the other person, or maybe even many people look at the screen to look at themselves. How do I look today? What's going on? Like, how's my hair?
Yes.
But you know what? If you want to get felt by the other person, we're so used to looking the other person into the eye when you're in a real conversation. And even if you want to do that in let's say in a Zoom call, by just looking at the screen and looking into their eye, you're not looking into the lens. You're not looking into the camera.
Yeah.
That means you need to train yourself to look into the lens, because that's the way that the other person is going to feel you, that you look into their eyes. And
it's funny. Well, see, Ronnie, it's funny for me. I come from acting, where you say, "Don't look at the camera." Like, forget the camera's there. I'd have a camera right here on me, and I'm like, I gotta look over here, or I have a camera right on me and look over here. Like, it's weird because in acting, you're told not to look at the camera, but in hosting, in some cases, they're saying look at the camera, it's okay.
Yeah,
great.
I mean, it always depends. It always depends. For example, when I do boxing ring announcing, and there is a camera there, but there's also audience there. And for me, I want to make this feel authentic. Like, I want to make it feel like as if there's a big stadium, as if there's like something like, hey, not just solely looking into the camera. It's really about also like creating this atmosphere, because this is the atmosphere that's going to be transported home. It's going to be transported into many people's homes. But obviously, if you're sitting in a TV studio and there's nobody, just you and the camera, you're going to look into the camera. You're not going to look around in your TV studio, because people are going to be like, where the hell is he looking?
Yes, exactly. But sometimes we'll see, sometimes you've had this before too, I'm sure. Sometimes you have co-hosts. So that does help a little bit too. But I'm a person who's one of these kind of people. I would talk to my co-host, but I love talking to the audience. So I'll turn and go, now you know what I'm talking about. I'll look right at the camera and I'll talk to them. They call them with little asides. I'll do a little aside, like, you know that's true what you just said. Like, I'll look at the camera, and the fans like that. They feel like I'm talking to them. But I am doing a show, so I'm talking to my co-host or my guest on camera, but also I do try to include the home audience. I try.
I like that.
I do. It's my techniques. It's like, I'll be talking to somebody and I go, now you guys at home know how that goes, right? And I'll just say that. And I go, oh my God. I go, yeah, I know how it is. I just want my little techniques that I do. I just kind of do. So that I'm not always facing the guest, because you're right. In the beginning, you're like, hi, welcome. I'm James Lott Jr. In the beginning, you're there. And at the end, you're probably there too. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for next time. But in between, you're having an exchange with somebody. So chances are you're looking at them. So I try to keep, because I say I don't want any barriers. I feel like the camera shouldn't be a barrier. The camera is just there to capture, but I want you to feel like you're in the room with us. How do you feel about that? I mean, that's something that I like to do.
I think it's always important to actually include the audience, to read the audience. Obviously you cannot read an audience if you're on TV, but you cannot see somebody sitting at home there. But at the same time, it's like really feeling, what is this person going through that's watching? Like, you need to understand those emotions and also be real. Like, if you're interviewing somebody, if you have a guest and talking with them, like, also experience what's going on inside of you. What are the emotions that you're feeling when this person is telling you that? Because chances are that the person at home might be experiencing exactly the same.
Yeah.
And also being open and vulnerable, being real, being you. Like, you're not a robot. Nobody wants to see a robot. People want to see human interaction. And they want to have somebody also who interacts real with them.
Yes, they do. They do. Now on the other side, I can talk to you forever about this. And it's just time going so fast. I can't believe it. I think forever. You have to come back on the show another time again. It's okay. We talk more about this stuff. But now I want to just go switch gears into that. Now you're offering services to people hosting. So talk about that. So you're offering services. I'd be a better host.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I do. And not just about being a better host, also being a keynote speaker, basically, or also if you're an opinion leader or let's say a CEO and you are in front of people a lot. It's really about how do you create yourself on stage? Because it's like you're not made like this. You need to build yourself up. You need to create yourself. That doesn't mean that you're going to be unauthentic. It's going to mean building on your essence, building on who you are and becoming the greatest version of yourself while still keeping your essence. Because that's the key point. The key point is not to be a copy of somebody else. The key point is that you are the best version of who you are and who you can be. Or for example, if you're a professional athlete and you have an audience, or many people, there are people who have an audience and then they shift their careers and suddenly they are like, well, what do I do with my audience now? And how can I address them? How can I take them along with me at the journey? For example, I'm talking a lot with my cousin, for example. My cousin has a real estate business and he just started basically a new business. And he recently told me, like, when it comes to social media, for example, because oftentimes that's the way to kind of build a bridge to your audience, to build a connection. And he's like, well, social media, I love it, but I want to show them when I'm at the top. I want to show them when I climbed a mountain. And I tell him, well, in order for them to care when you climb the mountain, they want to see how you get there. They don't want to see, hey, I'm at the top of Mount Everest. Well, that's awesome. But what happened before? How did you get there? What did you do? Like, in order to relate with you, in order to bond with you, people want to see how you did it because they want to feel, we love people that are like ourselves. We want to feel, is there something that is connecting us? Is there something, well, that guy is like me. Maybe not in everything, but in some aspects. And I think being relatable is also a very big part of that, because you need to be relatable for your audience. You need to be real and to teach that. But it's not just about teaching. When you think about Michelangelo as one of the greatest artists of all time, and when he created the David statue out of stone, and it's a marvelous piece. And afterwards, he got asked, well, incredible. This is perfect. How did you do that? How did you create that? And he said, you know what? I did not create it. It was always there. It was always there in that stone. I just set it free. Because I was just a person who took away everything that was unnecessary. And exactly the same is true when it comes to working on you and becoming a better communicator. Because it's taking away the things that are not necessary.
Because the whole thing about, because we were saying about hosting, it is about communicating. That's the basic. It's communicating what's here to the audience that's here, whatever that is. That's basically what it is.
It is.
Yeah.
And not just hosting, keynote speaking, everything. Yeah. Communication is the foundation. Because here's the point: when you step on a stage, that's not when communication starts. Communication starts the moment that somebody else takes notice of you. Like even if you're still standing next to the stage, the moment that the audience experiences you in the same room, that's when communication starts. That's when the others are starting to build an opinion about you. And that's what I always say: when you go on a stage, you have to love your audience. You need to love them. You need to you need to spread positive emotions.
Also, I want to say this, Ronny. The audience is rooting for you. They're not against you. A lot of folks get upset. They're not against you. They want you to be a good host, right?
They want to be entertained. They don't want you to suck. They're not like, well, I hope today the host sucks.
Right. No, of course not.
Or whoever went to a wedding and said, I hope the DJ sucks today.
Right. Exactly. Right. No one says that. People get so nervous. Like, no, they're on your side until they're not. I mean, if you make them not on your side, it's different, but they're on your side. They want you to win. And a keynote speaker, they're here because they need to hear something you have to say. Like they need to hear you say something they need for their business. That's
exactly.
They're on your side. They're on your side. And I've noticed that. You're right. They're forming opinions about you, but they're on your side initially. They're here for a reason. And yes, entertain. I think some hosts forget they're there to entertain. Just saying text and words is not enough sometimes. I'm not saying go over the top. Well, some folks go over the top and it works for them, Ronny. But you know what I mean? Like you're here to kind of, I have my own words I say. I have my own sayings I say that, you can entertain them that way. But I feel like that's part of the job. It's like we're here to, as we're moving things right along, we're keeping them awake, like you said earlier, keeping them awake. I mean, I just think it's great. Now, our audiences for you, because you've done way more than I have around the world, are audiences different around the world, or are they all basically the same? They're all basically similar.
Okay. Well, in one way, they are different. They are. Because let's say, for example, that you're a comedian. Yeah, okay. And you love to tell jokes. And that's different in a way. Like a comedian might be very popular in the US, and then in Europe it's like, what the hell? Or the other way around. Or you're like, man, I'm not getting it. Like that's what's going on with him.
Yes.
And they're still the same core essentials. It's still about understanding your audience, knowing who they are, knowing what triggers them. What is it that how do they tick? And then you can move them. If you understand them, you can move them. The worst thing that you can do is to just, well, I'm just going to do my thing. I don't care who the audience is.
Right.
Like it's going to be okay. I'm just going to do my thing. Because there's a saying, and I believe it's so true. It's people will not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's really about, you need to care about them. You need to show them that you care. And then you can influence them. And that is true around the world.
Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Someone in the chat room saying you have to keep the initial interest in what you're presenting. Your host skills keep the audience continually interested in learning more. Somebody said in chat room. Yes, we agree. We totally agree with that. That's the whole thing. Because they're looking at you. You're the guy. You're the person they're looking at. Well, you're the expert, so to speak. You're the one up front. So they're looking to you to keep it going.
And there's a reason why you're there. Like oftentimes when somebody maybe gets his first time to do a presentation, for example, on stage, and they're terrified. They're like, oh my God, I don't know. I got stage fright. No, you don't have stage fright. You might be afraid of getting to the stage. You have going to the stage fright, but nobody's afraid of a stage. Yeah, like it's about like, oh my God, I'm afraid of going there.
That's so
when you're there, it's usually okay.
That's true. I don't, maybe I'll give something away. I don't really get nervous. Not really. I just don't. I mean, I love it so much. I've been doing it for so long now. My thing is trying not to be complacent. So how do you stay fresh, Ronny, as a host? We've been doing it for a while now. You've been doing it for a while. I've been doing it for a while. How do you, I love the business. I love it. That's how I how does Ronny Leber stay fresh as a host?
It's a great point. I also think that you need to love it.
Yeah.
Like the moment you are like, man, what am I doing here? Or like,
yes.
The moment you're getting into your head, you're dead. It's over.
I agree.
Like in that moment, like forget about it. If you don't love it anymore, if you don't love to take people on a journey, if you don't love to really like to create an experience for others, then don't do it. And for example, when I want to give you an example.
Give me, please.
Two things. I was at a Bon Jovi concert.
Okay.
and I watched a movie, and it comes even better actually. And I watched a movie from Shakira. My wife is from Colombia, and she was
okay.
Like,
okay, yes.
I watched the Shakira movie, and I was like, yeah, well, all right. And both said the same thing, and it applies to us. They said, we are service providers. We are here for you. Do you think that Bruce Springsteen is getting enjoyed, like singing every night Born in the USA that he is saying for however long, or Bon Jovi Living on a Prayer or whatever? Like, I mean, was like the big hit in the 80s. Yes. And still every single day he gets out there in front of a crowd, he needs to perform it like it's the first time, or like it's because that's what people expect to hear. And it's really about you. You need to know that you're serving an audience. When you come from the perspective of serving somebody, the other person will notice that. If you come from, well, I'm here, but who cares? I mean, I don't care if you're there or not. Have you seen the movie Gladiator?
Of course, yes.
With Russell Crowe, when he first gets in the arena, and he's just like basically butchering the people, and then he's like, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? And he had to learn that in order to entertain, you need to win the audience. And I think it's so true for us.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, I don't want to end. You're so good, but I got to end it here. It's almost an hour. I got to end it here. I'm like, you have to come back on another time too, because you're good. You got to come back on another time. You're so good. Ronny Leber is my guest. Tell them where they can find. Well, on YouTube is on Ronny Leber, of course. I believe in all social medias are Ronny Leber. But where can they find your website and all that?
Absolutely. You already mentioned, of course, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, /Ronny Leber, basically, or Twitter. And of course, www.ronnyleber, that's RONNYLEBER.com. Make sure to click on the English version because it's a bilingual website. And there's also a blog on it. And there are many, many, many blog posts about how to better wow your audience. Like how to better, like whatever it is, if you want to become a host, if you want to become a motivational speaker, a keynote speaker, whatever it is, you can find all kinds of blog posts there on all kinds of topics for voice training, for how to talk to a camera, for your body language, all those kind of things. And if you want to know something more specific or you want to work with me, just write me a message.
Yes, do it. Yeah, folks. Of course, I'm James Lott Jr. You can follow me everywhere, even on TikTok. I'm on TikTok at James Lott Jr. Go ahead and follow me there. This is the 190th episode. So, Ronny, you made a big episode for us. So, thank you. I started the show like 5 years ago. 190 episodes. You made the big one, Ronny. Big one.
Yay.
All the way from Austria. Go ahead and follow him. Subscribe to his stuff. Follow him. Get some tips. Follow him. And follow me. And when you look at hosts, have compassion for them, because it's a lot of work that we love doing. Most of us love doing it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. But now I hope we get you a little insights if you see hosts out there with the job they have to do. And if you are a host, and a person who wants to be a host, who's looking at it, it can be a fun profession. So take heed to what we're saying. Talk to other people too, who are experienced hosts. And it can be a really fun profession. It really can. And he and I are having a good time still. We're still doing a good time. So do that. Everyone, have a great week, and we'll see